From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We are joined with our guest, super producer Dylan the Tennessee Pal Fagan. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. It is quite a week for strange news. We're going to visit some folks across the Pacific. We're going to go on air with some conversations we had in the past about different ambitious attempts at grassroots regime change, we'll call it. We'll see some bribery. We'll also just, for anybody listening right now, if you have a pager, no judgment. If you have a pager, move it across the room.
A pager? What is it, 1995? All over again? I had one. I had a bright green, translucent Motorola pager.
Yes. Hopefully, you don't need to be worried about your pager if
you're a doctor or a drug dealer or work production.
Mine never injured me, physically anyway.
Mine, the ones I had injured me emotionally.
Exactly. That's clear. All those mean-spirited pager codes that were flying around.
Is it really 911?
Yeah.
Is it really 911? Or do you just want me to tell you what Jennifer said about you in middle school? You know what I mean?
Nah, man, it's not 911. It's 80085.
Is it really boobs, guys? Is it really?
We're fans. And we've returned. Listen, folks, fellow conspiracy realists, we are recording this on the evening of September 18th, 2024, and our breaking news story should be considered just that. We don't have all the facts. Very few people do. But I was talking with the guys earlier when I got the news, and it quickly spread around the world. There was a massive pager attack on affiliates of Hezbollah.
But not like an interruption of service attack, like where all of a sudden people's pagers didn't work. It was something quite different, Ben, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct. This is, in contrast to a denial of service, this was a quote unquote service that the people affected certainly did not welcome, nor did they expect it. And to intro into this, I think it's important for us to note the events we're going to describe here occurred just a few days ago. As a matter of fact, as we were gearing up for things in the past 24 hours, another attack occurred, another mass attack with exploding walkie-talkies. This is going to be an episode in the future. Right now, we want to set the stage and answer some questions that are on everybody's mind. To really understand what happened, you need to go back to October of 1995. And a guy a lot of people don't remember his name, Kamil Hamad, met with operatives of Shin Bet. Without getting too into the weeds, that's Israel's counterterrorism outfit. And when this guy met with Shin Bet, he came to him and he said, look, I need funding and I need Israeli identity cards for myself and for my family. And Shin Bet, like a lot of good intel organizations will do, said, well, now we've got you by the short and curlies, right? Now you work for us. We will inform on you, and your bosses will murder you as a result. So he agreed to cooperate. He went in thinking that he was the deal maker, and he came out at the wrong end of a deal. So what they did is they gave him a cell phone, and they were upfront. They told him this was bugged so that they could listen in on his conversations. What's more important is what they did not tell Hamad. They did not tell him that this bugged phone also contained 15 grams of explosives.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, that was my initial question because, like, there's part of me that almost wondered, is this some way of hijacking a device and causing it to overheat to the point where it would injure somebody? But it's deeper than that. It's potentially like someone got in on the supply chain of the product or planted a tampered with product that these individuals ended up using. That just seems so complicated.
Which we'll get to. That's the 2024 event. We're still in like October 1995.
But yeah, you're describing that it is possible, right, to do that, but with one person, right?
That's what I'm hoping to do. Yeah, like the precedent here, which doesn't get as reported as widely as it should, takes us to not Camille Hamad. Camille Hamad was not the target of this operation. Instead, the intel was targeting a guy named Yahe Ayash, that is spelled Yahyayayaysh. During his lifetime, this guy was known as the prime or chief bomb maker of Hamas. And so when Shin Bet gives Kamal Hamad this cell phone that he knows is bugged, he knows is tapped essentially, what they're doing is waiting for him to give it to someone who will give it to Ayash. And so Hamad gives the phone to one of his nephews, and he knows that this guy, the chief bomb maker of Hamas, regularly uses this nephew's phones. And then fast forward, it's January 5th, 1996. Ayash's father calls him on this bugged phone. Ayash answers, and then an Israeli plane flying overhead picks up the conversation, relays it to command. They confirm this is the guy they're looking for on the phone, and they remotely detonate the device. They kill him instantly.
Wow.
Effective.
Brutal, effective, and this is what leads us to the news that everybody saw on Tuesday. An attack in Lebanon, across the country of Lebanon, caused pagers to explode. Thousands of people were injured. At current count, 12 are dead as a result of the pager attack, because the day after, this evening, as we record, walkie-talkies associated with Hezbollah affiliates also exploded. This is something that I would say is not unprecedented, therefore, in terms of the principle or the concept, but it is unprecedented, I would argue, in terms of the scale of the operation, to your earlier point.
It's wild. I mean, and we don't know much yet. So we will hopefully by the time we do this full episode. But we certainly know there are things like defects in phones that have to get recalled because the lithium batteries can heat up to the point of injuring people. I mean, there have been lawsuits filed against cell phone manufacturers for people getting horribly burned. But this sounds even worse than that. And more immediate. Yeah. We're hearing a lot about injuries to people's eyes and faces because they're holding the thing up to look at it when the call comes in.
Yeah, but they got a buzz notification.
Right.
And you can see a lot of video of the aftermath, which is horrifying. You can also see a couple of videos that just happen to be caught on things like CCTV. And what you'll see there is somebody gets a buzz like so. Bzzz. They reach into their pocket, they hold up the thing, and it explodes with much more force than an overheated lithium-ion battery.
Yeah, and a pager probably doesn't even take one of those. I mean, they're so underpowered; they don't need much.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It was said it was known that the pager definitely got a signal. There were some kind of strange code that was displayed, on the display there on the pager right before it went off. And it was like a couple second delay.
I think I maybe heard on public radio today that these were meant to be proprietary communications from Hezbollah.
Yes. Yeah. This was meant to be what we would call sequestered or discrete comms for Hezbollah. So if you had your own pager already, your Civi pager or your Civi phone, that would not be connected. This is to message people in this organization, because there is, as you can objectively understand, there's a great deal of concern about security of communication, because Hezbollah, being a proxy of Iran, has been at war with Israel for quite some time. Look, we know that this is ideologically deep for people. We're not here to talk about the ideology necessarily. We're here to explore what appears to be an insidiously successful covert operation, a genuine conspiracy.
Yeah. Can we quickly just talk about what Hezbollah is? I think sometimes people get confused about some of these organizations and groups, and just to give people the rundown on, like, because Hezbollah is a vast and multifaceted thing.
Sure. Yeah. Hezbollah is a political party, a Lebanese Shia Islamist political party, and also a paramilitary group. So if you talk to some people in Lebanon, they're going to say this is not a terrorist group, right? These are more akin to freedom fighters. However, it is an open secret that Hezbollah receives a lot of funding from the nation of Iran, which is currently a theocracy. And Iran has different statements about this. You know what I mean? Kind of like Russia writes laws about any Russian president. One notable thing that happened in the pager attack was that the Iranian ambassador was also injured. So one of the first questions that the international community is asking is, why did you have a direct plug-in to Hezbollah?
Holy crap. The plot thickens. I mean, no, that's, wow. That's very, I didn't even think about that aspect of it.
It's a big deal. It's a good question.
It's a big deal and a good question. This is where we get to something that was brought up a little bit earlier, but let's get to it. Initial conversation and speculation concerned the idea of how an attack could happen. Is it theoretically possible that malicious code could have been used to simply overheat a battery, right? Resulting in all of these things going off at once. That does not appear to be the case. Pagers, again, are, not super advanced technology. They're not all cloud connected.
Which is the point, probably, why they use these instead of cell phones or instead of smart devices, because it's so siloed and low tech.
And I keep thinking about, I rewatched it too many times. I keep thinking about the scene in Breaking Bad. Spoilers, 3, 2, 1. I keep thinking about the scene in Breaking Bad wherein Walter White ordered hits on a ton of people all in the same 2 minutes in the U.S. prison system. Do you guys remember that?
I don't remember what clever MacGyver method he used to do that, but I do remember that plot point.
He got a biker gang.
That's right. He had inside people in different prisons from this. This? You're saying just the level of precision in comms kind of reminded you of that?
Yeah. But in this case, also, innocent people were injured. And perhaps more importantly, this is real life. Now, another thing we have to think about here, when these explosions occur, again, simultaneously or near simultaneously, it tells us some very important things. The first thing it tells us is that this came from the same signal, right? The second thing it tells us is it's important, mission critical, to figure out the provenance of this pager supply, and speculation is going from Hungary to Taiwan right now. And then the third thing I think it tells us, to be quite clear, is that there was somebody waited. They put explosives in these things. They put grams of explosives in pagers, and they didn't immediately pull the trigger.
Yeah.
They waited, the question then is, why did they wait? Without sounding too James Bondy about it, it was probably because the plan was getting close to being exposed. So it was time to maximize the leverage.
Bro, it's hella James Bond. All of it. It's crazy. It's like the exploding pen.
The big question I have, guys, is if whoever did this, right, was able to gain access to all those devices, these are just like a pretty simple send receive signal device, right? Usually with radio signals. If they took the time and were able to gain access to all those things and put explosives in them, what makes us think that they weren't also enabled with some kind of listening device or tracking device,
like
or
the original story Ben told was,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Like, and
Mhm.
you're doing it across an entire organization, and it makes me think about the stories we've heard in the past from listeners and read online about, let's say, a federal agent from any country that intercepts an Amazon package or something that's ordered that has a device in it, like a new computer or a phone or something like that. It gets intercepted, and then something gets meddled with just enough to where it can be useful in the future. And it can be that kind of thing you're talking about, Ben, where it's a tool that now you have and you can use it when you need it.
Right. And you don't want the main thing you want to protect will be what we call methods, right?
Yes.
And I know we're going a little over again. We will have an episode on this pretty soon. Another question I had was immediately, what's next? There's a lot of scuttlebutt in the policy wonk field and the war maker field right now over whether or not this is the harbinger of a large scale ground invasion, which is very dangerous for innocent people. Here's what I learned when I thought, what's next? The goal was not to instantly kill everybody with these pagers. I imagine, again, whomever did it was hoping to fatally injure as many people as possible. We know
Send a
at
message,
least,
literally.
we know at least a dozen are dead. Worse than sending a message, more dangerous, listening, because now that you have that network identified, you can look at things like hospital routes. Which ambulances are picking someone up? Where are they going? Right? How many of these people are in these places? How many folks have similar injuries?
Well, yeah, because we're talking about the network of individuals that this opposition force is interested in, right? So you're absolutely right.
So are you saying that they don't already know who these people are?
Yes.
So how would they? So they cast a wide net. Does that mean that maybe potentially civilians got a hold of these devices too?
Quite possibly. That's why I use the phrase affiliates.
Yes.
And that's why it's important to say that, in Lebanon, Hezbollah is considered a political party, right?
Yeah.
So there are people who are not, out at the front lines of the border trying to murder folks. They ideologically identify with certain tenets of that party. And then if you, sew this part up, if you assassinate a few people, but then you have already hijacked the enemy's communication network, they are identifying their forces to you. And then right after that, they followed up with the walkie-talkies. I wish we had time to talk about the provenance, but it's going to have to be an episode.
Yeah, it's definitely a full episode. Just to think about it, guys, the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, that they describe Hezbollah as a terrorist organization because the United States has designated Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. Does this attack not feel like a terrorist attack or an act of terrorism? Both of these were
wide net carnage,
and completely unexpected, and then just the fear that it generates. I don't know.
I will say, as we end this, before we go to a break, there is what we could see as possible public motivation, which is the attempt at assassination. Hezbollah earlier failed to assassinate a guy named Moshe Ya'alon, and this may have been a reaction to it, or methods may have been exposed. We do know that the question on everybody's mind, and a lot of you guys, friends, were asking you about this, friends and family. We do know the question on a lot of people's minds right now is my stuff safe? Or, like my kid just got a phone. Is my kid safe? What could happen next?
Yeah, because it could be other classes of devices that are affected too, as we've already seen too. I mean, you could easily argue that those are both kind of more low-tech radio wave-based devices. And to my understanding, it's usually radio waves that are used to trigger bombs a lot of the time. But I guess surely there's advancements in bomb making and triggering.
Well, your device would have to have explosives in it to be triggered, right?
Of course.
Right.
I guess I just mean like it creates this sense of fear as to what's next. Like Ben was saying, like, could it be in an iPhone? Could it be in, my razor or whatever,
And here's why, as we go to ad break, here's why people are got other points I want to get to. Yeah, we'll do an episode. Here's why people have been concerned, candidly, about the idea of a large-scale ground war. It's because you're removing command, right? And a lot of Hezbollah command, by the way, didn't use these pagers. They were communicated to by people who had these pagers, so that the heads of the organization are not entirely gone. You remove command, you create fear, right? You break comms, and then by doing so, you remove the ability for the enemy to respond. And that is an arguable part of the calculus. This enigmatic what's next question is still haunting the world right now. We don't know what's going to happen. We know that as targeted as these things may appear on paper, there are inevitably civilians, bystanders, injured. And the question always becomes, what happens next? So we'll be back with a full episode. We know this is heavy stuff. We're here with you. We got your back, folks. Let's go to the ad break.
And we've returned. And we are going to travel over to Venezuela for the first story here. Maybe we'll get to the second one. We might just focus on Venezuela. We'll see. But guys, Venezuela in July had an election, and somebody that we've talked about a lot on this show, Mr. Maduro himself, won a third term as the leader of Venezuela, much to the chagrin of pretty much the world and the opposition that he faced there in Venezuela. People are saying, yeah, it really does seem like they're just covering up that he lost the election and just saying he won, and they being, the powers that he, Mr. Maduro, as a leader currently has, the levers that we just talked about with regards to other countries on the show, where once you have that power, you can do things like turn courts and legislatures and other powers in your favor to do things like cover up the results of an election.
We know the U.S. has done it for less. I mean, right? In terms of being instrumental in coups.
Carrying out a coup in another country. There was a story from July, Ben. I don't know if we actually talked about it, but you had it in the doc there to talk about at the end of July that there was a failed coup in 2020 in Venezuela, something like that. I can't remember the specifics.
Yeah. It's been fertile soil for attempted non-consensual regime change.
Oh, yes. To just go back to that election for one more minute, the National Electoral Council of Venezuela, also known as the CNE, declared Maduro the winner on July 28th, and it was ratified by the Supreme Court a couple of weeks later. But, the official documentation of that election, the things like what they call the disaggregated data from the vote tally sheets has not been published, and a bunch of other countries, including the U.S., is saying, this election is not right. Something is sour here, at least with those, with the official reporting on that election. And I didn't realize the opposition leader who was going up against Maduro in that election had to get the heck out of there. He had to leave because he was facing some pretty serious charges, really freaky stuff. He flew to Spain because there was an arrest warrant out for him, accusing him of terrorism and conspiracy.
That's what I accuse anybody who disagrees with me about anything else. I'm like, you're a freaking terrorist and you're conspiring. Quesadillas are clearly a superior sandwich. Someone arrest this man.
And this all transpired like after the election was called. Then all of a sudden these charges were filed.
Yes, and then he had to leave. The opposition leader there who had to go to Spain and was charged with that stuff was Edmundo Gonzalez, and he went out publicly and said, hey, this vote was stolen. This isn't right. And he became an enemy really quickly. So why are we talking about all this? Because it's context to this story that was written in CNN It is titled, U.S. says claims of CIA plot to kill Maduro are categorically false. That's in quotations.
Yes.
After Venezuela arrests 6 foreigners. Okay, so let's just get into this. State Department says, no, there's no base to these accusations that somebody was trying to kill, his name's Nicolás Maduro, by the way. I think we just lovingly calling him Maduro. Again, mentioned before in that episode, it is one of my favorite foods that exists on this planet, a good Maduro, or Maduros, usually.
What is that? I don't think I know about this food, man.
That is a ripened plantain that has been somewhat fried, and it is sweet and delicious.
I don't know that I've had a Maduro.
It's got a nice, it's so good. All right, we'll hang out later and get some.
But not this Maduro. I don't think we care for this Maduro.
We're not, hey, we're not involved, folks. We're giving you the strange news. As a matter of fact, none of us have officially visited Venezuela in any capacity.
Officially. This guy Maduro seems like a real pill, Matt.
Oh, yeah. Maduro, who was famously the number 2 for a long time to Hugo Chavez, which we've done a whole video series on and talked about numerous times. He had some weirdness going on, right?
Yeah, you can see. I hope YouTube hasn't pulled it down, though they're tricky with that kind of media. This guy, in the midst of running Venezuela, also was known for having his talk show that went on in excess of 4 hours, where you could just call him live, quote unquote, and ask him stuff, and then off the cuff, he would have this big, at least in the public facing persona, he would have big uncle energy, where someone would say, "Hey, sir, we are hungry, we're tired, crime is out of control," and he would just say something like, "Mothers are the most important part of this country. Give that woman thousands of dollars. You know what? Buy her a house. All right, next caller," which is not the way you're supposed to run a government.
Yeah, but he did have a team of people that just went out and bought houses. No, I'm just joking. I can't confirm that. So there was allegedly some kind of attempt on Nicolás Maduro's life, at least according to Venezuela's official apparatus there. And the State Department here in the U.S. says, no, that's categorically false. That did not occur. But Venezuela did arrest 6 people. That has been confirmed. Those 6 people include a U.S. Navy SEAL, which, Navy SEALs, guys, what separates someone who, I don't know, is in the Navy versus someone who is a Navy SEAL?
Badassery. I mean, Navy is like you're a sailor or you're on a ship, but I mean, my understanding, you can be a pilot too, but isn't a Navy SEALs like a special ops kind of individual?
That is my understanding. I just didn't know if you guys had anything further on that. I know Navy SEAL training is historically some of the most intensive stuff you can go through.
Brutal. Yeah. If you want to ever feel palpable tension in a room, hang out with some Army Rangers and Navy SEALs and just, ask them if they want to arm wrestle and stand back.
Don't ask them if they want to arm wrestle.
but yeah, you're right. Special ops, we call it small unit specialization as well. Often ordered or tasked with identifying, capturing, and or terminating high-level targets, or sometimes reconnaissance, just getting behind very difficult enemy lines, getting the lay of the land. And I think we talked about this in maybe July of 2024 on Strange News. That maybe that's a different one. Oh yeah, because that's the 2020, right?
Yeah, this was a whole separate thing in 2020 where there were 2 Green Berets that were arrested.
Exactly. And again, the government, the U.S. government, we should say, did make statements disavowing any kind of green lighting of this activity, right? So it is possible, just to be objective, it is possible that these folks simply had their own experience and their own expertise and leveraged that of their own agency and volition to push for something they wanted to happen without checking in with chain of command. Completely possible.
Mm-hmm. And guys, this Navy SEAL has been named a bunch of times. We're not going to say his name on here just because it doesn't. Well, maybe it does matter. We don't have to say his name. There are 2 other Americans that were also arrested, and then 3 other people. And Venezuela is alleging that this was a full-on, like, an action. a destabilizing action that was supposed to take place. They say that they seized 400 U.S. rifles that were linked directly to this plot, which implies, if true, that these were guys who were going to recruit a bunch of other people in country in Venezuela to take some kind of action that is much larger than just 6 human individuals, right? 400 guns. That's a lot of people. But that could also mean that it's some kind of weapons trade or, black market weapons deal thing going on, which I don't know, weirdly feels more likely to me, but maybe I'm out of my depth here when it comes to, some kind of attempted coup versus making some money on some rifles. I don't know.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Hey,
you raise a really interesting point there too, because I think it was not just the CIA that was accused of involvement, but the interior minister was saying Spain's intel agency was there.
Yeah.
And then, named a rogues gallery of possible actors.
Well, yeah, there was a Czech citizen and 2 Spanish citizens who were arrested. So I don't know. 3 Americans, 2 Spanish citizens, and 1 Czech citizen.
Do you think it's possible that there was some kind of internal dissent in, let's say, so the CIA, as you pointed out, has publicly responded, which they don't always do, but has publicly responded and said, hey, nope, hashtag not it, not us. Is it possible that there would be factions in that organization who decided to, pony up their own bones?
Aren't there we know that there's wheels within wheels in a lot of these massive branches of government and military branches, so maybe if this was some kind of siloed operation, like a black op of some kind. Is that what you mean, Ben?
Yeah. I think, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. It's an unknown. It's an unknown known? Wait, no.
No. It's a new no. It's a new no.
It's a new unknown no. Also, again, to be clear for anybody in general who's listening, we are not saying anything. We are asking questions, and I think that's totally fine.
Speculating wildly.
There it is.
I do love the point you made, Ben. I don't know exactly how you put it. Something about the CIA just saying, hey, not us. I'd love the idea of the CIA being known for having a reputation for just coming out and saying, our bad, guys, that was us. Yeah, sorry. Anytime they get accused of something, shucks, you got us.
The CIA's new motto, transparency.
Yeah, or shucks, you got us.
Shucks. Jeepers. We're the real apple dumpling gang of the 21st century. But you're bringing up, though, something that's incredibly important, because we know that there were multiple things that have been framed as coup attempts or even described as coup attempts by the people involved. What makes the CIA come out and say not it?
Right. Typically you'd think they would just not dignify it with a response.
I don't know. What do you think? Seriously, do you guys have any ideas of why the CIA would do that?
It's suspicious. It's weird. Maybe the denial is part of the op in a way.
Possible. Yeah. If we had to guess, and again, just guessing, then one of the reasons you would do this is to kind of maintain the boundaries and parameters of your current geopolitical rivalry. Honestly, and this is a terrible comparison, kind of like how when somebody stole the secret recipe for Coca-Cola and tried to sell it to Pepsi, and then Pepsi said, oh, no, not us. We're going to turn this to the authorities.
Guys, sorry, quick aside. Did you see that the Kentucky Fried Chicken original recipe secret spice blend was leaked by a relative of Colonel Sanders?
It's the ones closest to you, man.
No, they always hurt the ones we love.
My God, we need to impose sanctions on that person.
And the internet collectively shrugged because no one likes KFC anymore, except in Japan.
Has the CIA issued a statement? Where is Ja Rule?
It's a good question, Ben. It's a good question.
But hey, guys, just quickly, we can end this out here. There's a lot going on between the U.S. and Venezuela right now. Sanctions were just imposed on them by the United States. Sanctions on officials who are, they're in that close relationship with Nicolás Maduro, who may have actually helped change and cover up the election, right? Make it so that Maduro won. The U.S. imposed sanctions on several of those people. That was on Thursday, y'all, September 12th, as we record this. And then just before that, the U.S., the U.S. seized, I think it was like the private plane or basically the Air Force One of Venezuela when it was in the Dominican Republic. They just said, ours now.
But also not it.
Yeah.
They called dibs and then not it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Very, very weird, y'all. So there's more to come here. Look up. We're not going to talk about this story. Just look it up. And I want to make sure you are aware of this. Look up New York Fire Chief bribery scheme. Just look it up. Read about it. I'm sure we're going to talk about it at some point in the future. Yeah, have you ever thought, man, the fire department doesn't get to my house as quickly as it seems to a lot of these other houses? Well, if you're in New York City, there's probably a reason for that.
You gotta pay to play, baby.
A lot of money, apparently.
Pay to blaze.
All right. Be right back after a word from our sponsor.
And we're back with one more piece of strange news. Matt, I just wanted to do a quick micro story mention that your second story tease made me think of. There was a story that I read about a woman in Greece, I believe, who was setting fires in order to flirt with firemen.
That's a true story.
It's a true story. Who would come to the scene. A real firebug.
Oh my God, it's crazy. We keep meeting like this.
I know, it's bizarre. Had to get a gander at those beefcake firemen rushing to the scene in their sexy uniforms. But anyway, that's not what my story's about today. My story is about the workday, the workplace. It's a workplace story specifically centered around the work culture in Japan, which I know we've talked about numerous times as being particularly hard and harsh. A regular, work day in Japan is 9 to 9. It's my understanding, with people typically staying as late as 11 and sometimes 12. A lot of folks have probably seen viral images of Tokyo salarymen passed out on park benches and in train stations because they have to go out drinking with their bosses and they get hammered and the trains stop running. So they just kind of fall where they lay. And that's part of the culture as well. Well, another part of the culture is apparently it's quite difficult in Japan to quit your job. It's something we take for granted, I think, maybe here in America. In addition to all that other stuff, we have a lot more protections in this country, minimal though they may seem to the average blue-collar or hell, even white-collar worker here in America. But in Japan, they just don't have this, to the point where many folks report that when they try to quit their jobs, they are relentlessly shamed, hounded, harassed, borderline stalked by their superiors. There's a really great article in the Wall Street Journal that outlines a situation where somebody who attempted to quit their job, an employer literally came to their house, knocking on their door, came to their apartment, knocking on their door. There are stories of folks trying to quit their job only to be held up in weeks of meetings, told that this is going to ruin their life, this is going to ruin their future, all of this stuff, just absolutely browbeating type behavior. And, in Japan, there's also kind of a culture of non-confrontation. That is possibly, I think, likely what these employers and companies are taking advantage of. That despite being in an untenable situation, workplace situation where, that people feel like their mental health suffering, toxic environments, they find it really difficult to quit. To the point where in recent years, a handful of companies offering a service have sprung up wherein you can hire someone to quit your job for you. And they basically cover all of the bases in terms of giving notice, setting parameters for kind of no contact, even making sure that equipment or uniforms or any company property are returned. But it's just this buffer that for the price of like, a night out, maybe with friends, like a date night, $200 roughly American, you can hire these agencies to phone your employer and quit on your behalf, and you don't ever have to see or talk to these people again. There are sort of more bespoke versions of this that are a little more expensive, about $400 in the case of hiring a firm to quit a military job, because of the nature of that and the government ties of that kind of employment. They offer a lawyer to do the quitting for you. A company cited in this Wall Street Journal article, too timid to tell the boss you're quitting. There's a service for that by Miho Inada. The name of this company is Momori, which I think literally translates in English to "I can't take it anymore." And so this is one of the companies that does all of this legwork for you when you want to quit a job. It's pretty wild that it requires that, because it's certainly not illegal in Japan to quit your job, but there is such a kind of deference to authority figures and a sort of power dynamic in inequality that employers are bullying people into staying in jobs they hate. And the kicker is this: Japan actually has a worker shortage. So you don't have to be beholden to your current employer, because there's probably something else out there that you can snap up pretty quickly. And this is partially why there's been such a spread of these companies who are now also consulting with employers who are looking for people who have recently quit jobs. So they'll call Momori and say, "Hey, do you have any candidates that I might be able to ring up for these open positions?" So with that, I'd really love to hear what you guys think, especially you've been with your experience abroad. If you've witnessed any of this toxic workplace culture, and what you guys think of this kind of service and how popular it's becoming.
Well, I'm trying to imagine a situation where I felt like my boss was too legit for me to quit.
Well,
sorry, I'm so sorry.
No,
but where I'd be afraid to resign, and I did not understand it. I didn't have the personal perspective on it, because I don't know about you guys. I've known a lot of people who have resigned from positions over the years, or have left a position to go to another job, or that specific instance where you're like, I'm not going to work here anymore. I just need to put in my 2 weeks notice. Until I started reading this article that you shared with us, and there's another CNN article, there are a couple of other places that have articles on this, and they're describing, I couldn't fathom the number of overtime hours that people were putting in. There's a story in there of somebody who put in 159 overtime hours in a single month before dying, literally experiencing heart failure. Now, it's nuts for me, because you have to imagine that the stress levels in somebody who's going through that must be incredibly high. Is that stress directly related to the heart failure that person experienced? It seems to be so, at least it's written about it that way. I don't know the science behind all of that. But if you've got a huge number of people that are going through that kind of stress, then yeah, this kind of service makes a ton of sense. And being able to be that cold third party that says, here's what my client is going to do. And it takes the potential emotional encounter out of it, which is kind of good.
Probably worth your money at that point, because it sounds like some of these folks just can't muster up the courage or the kind of grit, I guess, to face that, because it is so off the charts toxic and mean-spirited and manipulative. Understandable. Ben, you have any experience with this kind of thing, just from your travels, or just any perspective on why this would be so necessary from a cultural standpoint?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. The overtime is crazy. Overtime here in the United States is pretty crazy as well, but Japan's work culture has some serious objective obstacles that will have to be tackled at some point. A lot of it is the idea of face, of preserving decorum in conversation. Another thing that happens on the flip side of this, which may help explain the emergence of these sorts of agencies, is that sometimes Japanese companies won't fire people. Instead, they'll kind of quiet fire them. They'll sideline them from projects.
Slow fade.
They'll just not give them work. You show up, you have 8 hours, 9 hours in the day, and you don't have anything to do, right? You're literally rearranging paper clips. You're just checking on the printer, making sure the coffee is working. This is something that unfortunately a lot of people have experienced. And another thing that may be missing, I think, from what we would call the salaryman philosophy is that in places like the United States, which doesn't have the same worker protections as maybe your EU countries, but in places like the United States, it is not abnormal to fire or to be fired, to resign, or to somehow quit a job and then go to another place in the same industry without your character or your reputation being besmirched. It's not necessarily a demerit. People know you get in situations. However, depending on the industry we're talking about in Japan, in corporate life, it can be seen as a vast demerit, as a loss of face if you are, God forbid, fired, right? Because that means that you did something. Or if you quit, that also means that you did something. And so now the onus is on you, and you have this sort of scarlet letter employment-wise upon your character. So there are reasonable, valid, and actionable needs that explain why this industry would take off, because a big part of it too is being able to not burn bridges, to retain good relations even after you are maybe no longer a colleague of someone.
For sure. The article on CNN that Matt mentioned interviews somebody named Shiori Kawamata, who's the operations manager at that Momori agency that does this, and said that in the past year alone, this article just came out like last month, they've gotten more than 11,000 inquiries. And the agency is located in Minato, which is a very busy business district in Tokyo. It's been around since 2022. And there's a really telling quote from Kawamata that I think I can end on, saying, we sometimes get calls from people crying, asking if they can quit their job based on XYZ. We tell them that it's okay and that quitting their job is a labor right. And there was something I was trying to remember earlier, just one last point that I wanted to mention. Another thing that Kawamata says is that most of the time the employers go along with them and they're, quitting on behalf of these other individuals, but about 10% of them insist on further negotiations involving lawyers. So there is just this really entrenched culture of just not taking no for an answer when it comes to, the bosses there in Japan. It's very, very interesting. It does kind of, reading stuff like this does make me feel lucky that we have the minimal labor protections that we do have here in the good old United States. So that's that one, guys.
We have learned a lot, and thank you for bringing that story, Noel. We've got a lot of listeners in Japan. We've got a lot of people listening who are of Venezuelan extraction or provenance, or may live in Venezuela now, and we have family members in Lebanon or of Lebanese origin, and there is so much more to all of these stories. We can't do this show without your help, so thank you very much, fellow conspiracy realist, for tuning in. We would love to hear from you. We want to hear your takes.
Hot or otherwise.
Right. We've got more stuff on the way, and you're our favorite part of it. So please do reach out, join us here in the dark. We try to be easy to find through any number of means.
Oh, do reach out. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on YouTube, where we have video content galore for you to enjoy, and on X, FKA, Twitter. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Hey, do you want to call us? Our number is 1-833-STDWYTK. It's a voicemail system. It gives you 3 minutes. That's all you got. Got to make it quick. Give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you got more to say than can fit in that 3 minutes, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
The entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. We can't wait to hear from you. We're running behind on some of these responses, but it's only because you give us so much amazing and disturbing things to think about. Shout out, by the way, to Dan A., who has recently persuaded us that Manchurian candidates can now exist thanks to technology. So thank you / man, dang it, Dan. If you want to be part of this, we'd love for you to join us just off the edge of the map here in the dark. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.